Pour yourself a harp and join me for some ARP, Networking 101. You know, we hear it all the time, but what the heck is ARP? What is Address Resolution Protocol, and how does it work on the network? Well, ARP is one of those kind of older school protocols that we designed kind of back in the day for our devices to find each other, right? What you're looking at is that in a very simple type of network, if I've got two machines here and they want to communicate, let's say that my machine, this is Rob, and Rob has the IP address of my machine. So this is me, Jimmy Ray. And he says Jimmy Ray's IP address is 172.16.1.3, because 3 is my favorite number. And he's like, but, you know, we're on the same network, we're on the same segment, the same line. I don't want to communicate with him layer 3 because for efficient communication, I want to communicate as low as possible. Makes it a lot quicker, right? If we're going from, driving to somebody's house, we want to take the quickest route possible, unless it's your mother-in-law's, and then, I get that, trust me. But so what we're trying to do is communicate with that MAC address, but we got to find it. So how do we do it? Well, what happens is Rob sends out, he looks in his ARP cache in his device. In memory, he'll have basically like a table that will have listed all the ARP addresses, entries that he's talked to, so he knows how to communicate. So if he says, hey, I'm going to talk to Jimmy Ray, he looks in his table, he can't find my address. So now he's got to ask everybody, where's Jimmy Ray at? Now, we call this a broadcast address, and we got a Networking 101 on broadcast too, so check that out if you want some more information on that. Since he doesn't know it, he has to ask everybody out there. So it's kind of like walking into a big room and saying, has anybody seen Rob? And you don't know who Rob is, and you're hoping that Rob will be in the corner. He's like, hey, dude, I'm right over here. So the equivalent of that is he sends out a full broadcast message, which just basically contains 12 Fs in it. And it's going to, I just drew 6, but you get the idea. So he's going to send out all these Fs on the network, and it's going to just basically say, does anybody know what the MAC address of this address is? And this frame is called an ARP frame, Address Resolution Protocol. And so the person who responds is, of course, going to be me. My address is going to say, oh, yeah, dude, that is me. And my MAC address is, 01, or actually 04, 0C, blah, 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 blah. You guys know MAC address format. And I'm going to reply back, and then Rob's going to actually take his machine, and he's going to update his ARP cache, and he's going to put that entry in there, and he's going to say, hey, now I know how to communicate directly with Jimmy Ray, and everything is really relaxed and groovy. It's a very quick format. It works super, super easy. But if there's folks out there that are looking at this, and you're thinking, well, how do you know that that's Jimmy Ray that actually responded to that address, right? If you go back to that analogy and you say, has anybody seen Rob? Anybody can answer and say, I'm Rob. If you're thinking that, then my guess is you got a pretty darn good career ahead of you in security, because this is a humongous attack on the network. And this is actually called ARP spoofing. And so really, you're right. Anybody can actually answer that request. And so if we have, in another scenario, if we have, Rob wanting to communicate with me, so this is Rob. And so he's like, hey, does anybody know Jimmy Ray's MAC address? It doesn't prevent our producer, Steve, from getting in the middle of this conversation. So this is Steve. And saying, yeah, I'm Jimmy Ray. It's all good. And he can actually send his MAC address into this table. And Rob doesn't know the difference. He's like, no, okay, I'll put that in. I can find Jimmy Ray right down here. And so what happened, this is what we call an MITM attack, or a man-in-the-middle attack. You will hear this a ton. Man in the middle. And it basically refers to literally a man in the middle of this attack that's telling somebody else false information. For this to work, this traffic still has to go through here. So Steve is actually, still sending this information to me, because if I know that Rob is supposed to send me information and I don't get it, then, I'm going to actually start pulling some alarms. So Steve has to almost act as a router and start bridging this information in. But everything that's passed through, it pops up on Steve's screen, and he can read it. And he can say, oh, that's Jimmy Ray's password, or that's his credit card number. You know, I'm actually going to go to B&H Video and start, you know, buying some cool stuff. So that's how this works. Now, ARP is a great protocol. It's been around for forever, right? And it's so good that, you know, if we're looking at IPv6, it was carried over to IPv6, and some people will even tell you, oh, no, it wasn't. We don't use ARP. Yeah, you do. You just change the name, and it's called NDP, Neighbor Discovery Protocol. Works the same way, except it's a lot longer addresses and stuff. But it is a carryover, because how are you going to find these people on the wire, right? We have to be able to find these folks, and the bigger your network is, the more of a job that this gets to be. Now, a couple things on ARP before I kind of wrap it up and let you all go. I know you got stuff to do. Is that ARP is a layer 2 type of protocol, right? You cannot route it. It does not cross a routed boundary. It does not cross a VLAN boundary. It must stay on your same segment. So if you've got a bunch of clients here and they're all on the same network itself, so if everybody's on 172.16.1.x, everybody that's over here, they will ARP to each other like crazy, you know, and that works pretty darn well. So it just works on layer 2 side of the house. If you know, anybody on this other side of this router, they'll never see those, because those will be dropped. And that's the efficiency aspect of it, right? That's why we want to communicate at layer 2 as much as we can. But get to know ARP. You're going to use it all the time. It's going to be on your network, and it's important to understand how to secure it and and use the countermeasures in your equipment to do that. ARP has no provisions whatsoever to secure it, not even in IPv6. So what you have to do is look at what your equipment, what your manufacturer offers for what you call ARP spoofing protection. And most everybody offers some level of protection on it. It's just how much of a pain in the tail is it to configure and manage. So take a look at that, find it out. Really good stuff.